Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. So today I want to talk to you about Total War and I want to talk to you about 40k. Now over the past couple of years the Total War Warhammer series has been absolutely fantastic for the Warhammer franchise. I would go as far to say that it's because of the success of this that is maybe why GW have brought back the old fantasy game. Now the question I always get is, will Total War ever go into the 40k IP? Could it work within the 40k IP? Let's jump in and let's have a little talk. So I want to start with my only concern about bringing 40k to the Total War series, and that would be how the combat would be shown on the battlefield. This is what Total War's all about. It's about having these massive armies, charging each other, hitting each other, you know, unleashing artillery, smashing, having these epic, huge battles that we all bloody love to sit down and watch and stuff like that. There's like channels all over YouTube which just show these epic battles, and they're fantastically edited together. Now, when it comes to 40k, it's a lot different than the fantasy games that we've had from Total War. I know Total War have done range games in the past when it comes to like Napoleon and stuff like that, but that was a very line orientated kind of setup where like first rank fire, second rank fire, that kind of stuff. So if we compare that to the 40k battlefields and what we expect from the 40k battlefields, it's a lot different than what we expect in the fantasy sword slashing and stuff like that. I'm not saying that melee combat won't be a thing. Of course, melee combat is a huge, massive thing in any 40k thing. You know, power swords, chainsaws, scorpions. It's definitely in there. But I'm saying for the actual range combat, I personally think there'd have to be a big rework on how the game is done, because imagine like a full army of Lehman Russ tanks charging an enemy force. You're firing all your cannons off and stuff like that, and you have to think of it like the grander scale. How will it look? How will the battlefields look like? How will it shape the battlefields when you have like these massive mechanized armies? Just take for example, imagine if they had Titans in the game. How would a Titan look on the battlefield? How would it fire? How would it react? How much force and devastation could it bring to the opposing armor? I think a great example to base the game off would be the Apocalypse mod. For the Dawn of War series. It's probably one of the greatest 40k mods you'll ever play. For those of you who don't know, it's the original Dawn of War. Some people came in, they made a mod of it, and they basically took it and they just pumped it up and made it just full-on full-scale battles. You can have Titans in there, huge massive armies, they all go at each other, and it's just complete and utter glorious purging. Another thing people have spoken to me about is how would they achieve the campaign system in a Total War 40k game. If we look at any Total War game, we know that it's all about conquering cities, taking resources, basically becoming the emperor, the general, the lord of the known world. That is your goal, to conquer, destroy, and claim everything in whatever faction you're absolutely playing. Now, if we look at 40k again, 40k is way bigger than that, because you just don't have a continent, you just don't have a planet, you have millions of planets, you have systems. All these systems are spread, millions upon millions of miles, or light years away, should I say, from each other. The galaxy itself in Warhammer 40,000, for example, if you pick the Imperium, look at that empire, that spreads across the known galaxy to the far reaches. How would you achieve that kind of scale where you can go around, conquer, bring justice, stop revolts and stuff like that? How can you achieve that in the 40k setting? And I think a great example of this to achieve it, if we look at another Warhammer 40,000 game, another 40,000 digital game, which is Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2. For those of you who have played the single-player campaign in there, you can pick between Necrons, Imperium, and Tyranids. Each one have their own little things on there. But if you take for the Imperium campaign, for example, you go in there and you have basically like a star map, and that star map leads to like different sectors and stuff, and in the sectors you have different planets. These planets give certain resources, like better frigates and stuff like that. But the ease of it of going around, and it gives you a sense that you're not just in one part of the galaxy doing something. Your influence, your battle prowess is spread across the galaxy, and it gives you a grander scale of what you're conquering in the Imperium's name. And the way I think you could do it for a Total War 40k game is basically have something like where the planet is the city. So like when we're playing Total War games and you have cities and stuff, and that gives the certain resource. So you have the planet as the city. You don't have regions upon the planet to conquer, because that would be completely insane and just take forever. don't think really anyone could really achieve that kind of process. Well, probably someone could, but it'd take years upon years upon years. So if we have the planet as the basic city, and then you have the system as the region, so you have planets within the system, which is of course affects the region, and maybe then that's when you can go in there and start changing different resources to each planet, and that affects the whole region and the outcome and stuff like that. I think that is probably the best way that they can achieve that kind of grander scale of bringing a 40k game to life. And let's not forget content, because content is a massive factor in any Total War game, and we are absolutely blessed as 40k fans with the amount of content that can potentially be brought to a Total War 40k game. If we just look at the Imperium for a second, so the Imperium has so many factors to it. So you have the Imperial Guard. Within the Imperial Guard, you have different regiments. You have Talon, you have the Vostrians, you have Cadians, you have Catagans. You can bring all these bloody regiments to life. If we go to the Space Marines, again, the Space Marines, they have first founding chapters, the Imperial Fist, the Raven Guard, the Salamanders, the Blood Angels, then you have the second founding, the third founding, all these bloody chapters that you could bring to the table. You have the Inquisition, you have stuff like the Adeptus Custodes. Yes, they see themselves as their own, but you get the grander sense of what I'm talking about when you look at content in 40k. We literally have so much to choose from and to purge with if they actually bring that to life in a 40k game. I actually think that they may be overwhelmed right at the start with how much stuff you could probably bring. I would go as far as to say maybe it would be better to streamline it in the beginning, where you you have the Imperium and you just have basically one Imperial Guard regiment. I know that's probably heresy because people I want to play my Vostrians and everything like that. Maybe a couple of Space Marine chapters to play with, maybe stuff like the Inquisition or like the Admech as just like one main force, and that applies to the other races and factions as well, because even though I'm talking about the Imperium, if you look at the Orcs and all the the different clans within them, the Necrons, all the dynasties in there, the Tyranids and all the different hive fleets, there's just literally so much you can have and be overwhelmed with. And on the subject of factions, that is another key talking point, is how many factions would we actually have in a Total War game? We've got to have every faction possible. So we've got to have the Eldar, the Dark Eldar, the Tyranids, the Imperium. Again, the Imperium can be broken up into anything. The Orcs, the Necrons, the Tau. Is it got to be streamlined where you have a couple of factions and then they add it with the DLCs and stuff like that? Because again, the amount of stuff you can bring to one of these games when you talk about factions is absolutely incredible. And that leads into the next point, is if you do this, then what kind of HQ choices are you going to have? And that kind of leads into the story, which we'll get into in a second as well. So if you, for example, if you pick the Imperium, are you going to have Rebuti Gilliman? Is he going to be the Lord Commander? If you have the Necrons with the so-called Silent King now returning, is he going to be the main factor when it comes to that faction? It's Gaz Skull for the Orcs. What kind of HQ choices can we have and lose ourselves with? There's just literally so much stuff that really excites me that could really happen in a Total War 40k game. And that leads on to the story, because we all know Total War games are based around certain times in our history, or in Total War Warhammer's case, in certain fantasy's history. In Total War, it's more or less to the end of the end times, I would say, or all the characters that are in it at the moment are present in the end time, so it's around that era. If we look at stuff like Rome Total War, Caesar and all that kind of stuff, how would they go about that in a Total War 40k game? Will it be actually where we are now with the Great Rift, the galaxy splitting into Lord Commander Gilliman, Abaddon's back, the so-called Silent King returning, or would they go back in time where it's before the Primaris Marines, it's before Belisarius Call, it's before Gilliman's rebirth and stuff like that? Because again, when it comes to Warhammer 40,000, you basically have 10,000 years of lore to go into. You could even, if you wanted to, go back and do the Horus Heresy. I don't really think a Horus Heresy game would be good. I would love it, but it wouldn't be that cool in a Total War game, because that means you're more or less leaving out the Orcs and the Necrons and all that kind of stuff, because they weren't really around then. They were around, but they weren't a big threat like they are now in Total War 40,000. So for me, it would definitely have to be after the Horus Heresy. But again, a Horus Heresy game would be cool. But the main thing to talk about is story-wise, there's literally so many directions you can actually go in. For me personally, it would probably have to be where we are now in the lore, because you have so many big characters back and stuff like that. You have Gazskull, so-called the Beast, the new Beast. Again, the Silent King returning. You have, you know, all the Necron dynasties, Awakening and stuff like that. There's more threat now in this time of the IP than kind of any other time before. In summary, I do think a Total War 40k game would be welcomed by the community, because we've really had not that much luck when it comes to RTS games. The last RTS game we had was Dawn of War 3. You know, we thought that this was going to be everything that we dreamed of, and it was just a mess, to basically sum it up, to be kind. It just didn't work. It let a lot of us down, and we have been craving for another RTS game in 40k. We love RTS games as 40k. You know, 40k itself is... well, it's not a real-time strategy game. It's a turn-based strategy game, but it's a strategy game. And I think strategy games best show off Warhammer 40,000. And I, for one, would absolutely love the Total War developers to get their hands on the 40k IP and bring it to life in one of those games. As we can see from the Total War Warhammer games, they understand the IP. They have the love for the IP. That game is amazing. And if they did that with the same love and care that they can do to 40k, then I will be completely sold. And I do think that it probably would be one of the biggest games that they would probably make, and probably the biggest game when it came to Warhammer 40,000 video games. Alright, Chaperonios, that's me done for another video. Thank you for coming, thank you for watching. As always, I would like to get your thoughts and feedback. So if you've got like an idea, how could something be implemented, or like how can this faction look like on the battlefield? How could with their firepower, how could it do? Just lose yourself, and we can just brainstorm down there and have a bit of fun and just talk and stuff like that. Right, thanks for coming, thank you for watching, have a great day, see you now, and bye bye.